At noon, the outdoor cafe was noisy and crowded, but Christian still managed to get a table. He made an order and sat comfortably, waiting for his wife Stephany. They had agreed to meet here for lunch, but Christian knew that she would definitely be late, and to pass the time, he boredly looked at the people in the cafe. Suddenly, his eyes caught on a young couple with a child, a little girl with brown eyes and pretty curls, touchingly fed her teddy with a spoon, and her parents were happily watching and talking. Christian sighed. Not so long ago, he also had a similar brown-eyed daughter, Molly. Christian's heart clenched. He suddenly realized that he hadn't thought about his former family for a long time, hadn't thought about his daughter. Trying to delete them out of his memory, plunging headlong into work, meeting with friends and doing chores for his new family. Eleanor, his first wife, was a sweet, homely housekeeping woman who devoted herself entirely to her child and her husband. In the evenings, having finished cleaning the house and cooking a delicious dinner, Eleanor always greeted Christian from work as if he was the dearest person in the whole world. One day, Eleanor informed her husband that her mother was ill and she and Molly urgently needed to visit the sick woman. "Eleanor, do you understand that I can't go with you? I have many important things to do," said Christian. "Of course, dear. I'm not asking you to. Take care of your important project in peace. Molly and I will get ourselves there. I've cooked the food, the house is cleaned, and the clean clothes are in the closet, as usual. You won't even have time to miss me," said his wife with a smile, but her voice treacherously trembled. Perhaps the woman felt that they were seeing each other for the last time. But Christian was unfazed and calmly let his wife and daughter go on this trip. He drove them to the airport and asked his wife to call him when they got to her mother. His daughter pressed himself against her father as they were leaving, murmured something in his ear, smiled happily, and kissed his prickly cheek. After flight check-in, Christian immediately left without seeing the look Eleanor was giving him. During his wife's absence, Christian called her only a couple of times, citing his constant employment and fatigue. She herself was not bothering him, but he was used to the fact that his wife was always quiet, tried not to disturb him, especially during his work. And then Eleanor's mother called him, and, sobbing into the receiver, said that his girls died in a car accident. Christian, going crazy with horror, rushed to the airport, but he could not get a ticket and came only 2 days later, when his daughter and wife were already buried. Christian was inconsolable, but his colleague Stephany helped him to cope with grief. The man struggled with heartbreak and was grateful to Stephany for her support during a difficult time for him. After some time, she became his new wife. Several years have passed since then. Christian's family life with Stephany was different from the domestic idyll that Eleanor had created for him. Stephany hated doing housework, disliked cooking, but had a passion for all kinds of entertainment, meeting friends, and adored the outdoors. At first, Christian actively supported Stephany in her endeavours, but gradually he began to get tired and miss the usual domestic comfort. Christian had long ago received his order, but Stephany was still not there. She appeared when the man had already finished his salad and proceeded to the main course. She immediately announced that she had finally chosen a resort where they would be vacationing in a week. Hearing the name of the area where it was located, Christian felt cold inside. It was not far from Eleanor's mother's place. He reminded Stephany of his ties to that place, but she wouldn't listen to him. "What are you worried about?" "Well, your wife has died there. So what?" responded Stephany calmly. "That's your past. and I'm your present." "Should I forget that my only child died there too?" said Christian angrily. "Oh, don't start again, please. I have enough time to give birth," said Stephany capriciously, and hugged her husband, trying to smooth over the incipient quarrel. But Christian was already angry. He would soon be 40 years old, and the prospect of looking like a grandfather next to his child did not please him at all. He stood up abruptly, threw a few bills for lunch, and left the cafe. Stephany made great efforts to reconcile with Christian, and after a week they arrived at vacation in a distant, beautiful place where friends were already waiting for them. They spent the first day merrily and carefree, but then something happened that came as a big surprise to Stephany. The morning after the wild party, she woke up with a wild headache and nausea. At first, Stephany took these symptoms as the consequences of the party, and at first she paid no attention to them. But when it began to recur every day, for no apparent reason, the woman got scared and cried, and Christian took her to the doctor's office. After leaving her with the doctor, Christian went outside to smoke. But then he saw something that nearly knocked him unconscious. He leaned against the wall and, stunned, seeing as Eleanor and Molly were walking toward him on the sidewalk. They were talking merrily about something. The girl had noticeably grown up and was very much like her mother. Christian looked unblinking and could not believe that this was really happening. He probably just imagined it, though the resemblance was too obvious. Christian shook his head to get rid of the obsession, but it didn't help. They were already quite close and suddenly stopped, and both looked intently into his eyes. "Daddy?" said the little girl softly and timidly. Christian cried out like a wounded animal and rushed to the girl. He fell to his knees, squeezed her in his arms, and, unable to hold back his tears any longer, burst into violent sobs. "My darling, my daughter," he said over and over again, and when he had calmed down a little, he looked at Eleanor and held out his hands to her. "No, don't do this," she said quietly, and stepped back. "I didn't expect to see you again someday." Christian looked at her with wide eyes, still not understanding what was going on. He started talking about the accident, the funeral, but Eleanor interrupted him abruptly. "Christian, there was no accident." She sighed. "I set it up, and my mother backed me up." "I don't understand. Why?" whispered Christian. And then Eleanor, with tears in her eyes, told him that she had done it all for their common good, and most of all for Christian. Eleanor truly, deeply loved her husband, closing her eyes to all his betrayals just because he always returned to the family hearth. But one day he did not return, just on Eleanor's birthday. The day before, a strange woman came to her. She was beautiful, slender, and made it clear that Christian was in love with her, and more than that, she was expecting him to have twins. But even then, Eleanor didn't give up right away. They made a bet that night Christian would stay with the one whom he really loved, and that night was the first time that Eleanor's husband didn't come home for the night. He called them, saying that he had to leave for work and would not be back until tomorrow. And Eleanor, swallowing her tears, heard a woman laughing, muffled in the background. The pain was tearing Eleanor's heart. Her mind became foggy, and the only thing that saved her from an irreparable action was the thought about Molly. But that was not the end of the story. That woman came again and threatened that if Eleanor did not leave the family, she would end her life and her unborn children. Eleanor knew that in that case, her husband would suffer a lot, and not wanting to cause him pain, decided to disappear from his life herself. She paid whoever was needed and set everything up so that Christian would not know anything about it. "Eleanor, it's all a lie. Stephany and I never had children, and I've always loved only you, and I had no idea how much. I missed you and my daughter so much. Let's start all over again. Now that I know you're alive, I can't live without you." "At least don't lie to yourself," replied Eleanor with sadness in her eyes. "You forgot about us quickly. I've been to town a few times, and I've seen you enjoying life. You haven't even been to our graves." With a heavy sigh, Christian tried to explain that he could not, as he was very hard. But these details did not bother Eleanor anymore. She had long ago buried her love and pain in those very coffins when she realized how quickly her husband had blotted them out of his memory. Eleanor told him that after moving here, she met a good man, Raphael, who just happens to work as a doctor at this hospital. They got married, and Molly considers him her father, and for the first time in her life, Eleanor felt truly loved. Christian looked at Eleanor confusedly, and Molly suddenly, excitedly, cried out and rushed toward the man in the white coat who had appeared on the steps. "Daddy!" she shouted cheerfully. Eleanor looked at her daughter and at Raphael with a smile, and added, "And, by the way, Raphael is aware of the whole story, and his love for me and my daughter has become even stronger. Oh, by the way, your destiny is coming up." She grinned, nodding towards Stephany, and turning her back on Christian, she walked toward Raphael. Stephany, red with anger, immediately pounced on Christian with reproaches. "Where have you been? You left me all alone. There are only idiots in this hospital. They said I was pregnant. And how is it possible if I don't want children and take pills regularly?" Christian was silent, as if he did not hear her, and sadly looked at the driving away car with Eleanor and Molly, and clearly realized that he had lost them again, this time forever.